Hi, my name is Karen Daly. I am the settlement attorney and branch manager here at the EKKO Title 1 Loudoun Ashburn office. And with me today again, I have Michele. Hi. She is with our Fredericksburg office. Yep. And today, Michele, I don't know about you, but I've been having a lot of questions about post-settlement occupancy agreements. Yes, I know.
Tons and tons and tons.
And especially this year, I think they were super popular.
Yep.
And I'm still seeing some of them.
Yep, absolutely.
Although I think it's starting, I don't know if you've seen it, but I've started seeing the rent.
There's actually
a charge,
There's
right?
actually a charge.
Yes, and it's not free anymore.
No.
Whether it's a flat rate or it's based on the PITI or whatever they choose, right?
Yep.
So let's talk about first, when you have the post-settlement occupancy agreement, right? When would be the best time for the buyer to do their walkthrough prior to settlement? Are they gonna do it the day before settlement or on settlement?
My rule is always you do the walkthrough the day of settlement, the day you're signing, because that you want to set the condition of the property. You don't want to get into an argument that it was like that the day before, or like that the day, those arguments need to be absolutely removed.
And they need to be clear too,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
So that's great because the agreement does say that it's the condition as of settlement.
Right.
Although I did have one agent change that time frame, but
yeah, they can do that. Just watch out, because if they change it, they've changed the rules and you've signed off on it.
Yes. Yeah, you should pay attention to that. So and then it goes through until the last day of settlement. So usually what we saw a lot of was there was no charge, but you had a security deposit. So what does a security deposit cover?
So a security deposit should be covering any change in the condition of the property from the walkthrough of the day of settlement to the walkthrough once they vacate, and any, issues that come up. I mean, I like to think about it like, the movers drop something down the stairs and there's damage done. That's really what we're talking about. The condition should be the same. So we're talking about things that have changed and are different now.
Right, or maybe they scratched the wood floors, which you hope to God doesn't happen.
Right,
things
but stuff happen. Murphy's a real thing.
Exactly, right, always shows up. So if you're a buyer and it's been a rather challenging transaction, emotions are hot. What would you recommend for a buyer when they're going through to do that walkthrough? Because you still have furniture that's there,
right?
And what's the best way to document some of these things to make sure that yes, that changed, no, that didn't change?
It's hard,
right?
I mean, it's hard. You've got a furnished house. Everybody's heard the circumstance where they pull up the rug and there's a big stain of some kind on the floor, and we don't know. That could have been there for 10 years, 100 years. We have no idea. I think that's a challenge. And so I think you just have to try to document as best you can. Hopefully there was a home inspection, there were pictures.
Right.
I would be trying to take pictures during the walkthrough. People's personal things are still in the house though, so it's a hard situation, especially if it hasn't been the smoothest transaction.
Right.
But just do the best that you can to document as best you can.
Right.
And same thing when you go back in to do the final walkthrough and you notice that there's damage.
Right.
You definitely need to document. Luckily with the phones and stuff now, it's super easy to do.
Right, and let's talk a little bit too about the damage. So, you've got, maybe, the sellers had pictures hung up and so there's some nail holes.
Sure.
Is a security deposit there for a handyman to paint the whole entire wall? I mean, what's realistic?
Well, realistic is whatever a reasonable person says.
Right.
And so some of the people are crazy and we don't have reasonable people. So, you gotta know who you're dealing with. One of the things, and I'm gonna go off subject for just a minute, but one of the things with post occupancies is that I always like to encourage people not to sign them at the time of ratification.
Okay.
Because you don't know what you're dealing with yet, right? So I see a lot of agents write in the contract, post-occupancy may be considered. Yeah, perfect. Because if they're crazy, you don't want them staying in. I know in the market we just came out of, that really wasn't happening. We were seeing 2 and 3 month post-occupancies, free rent, no security deposit, because that was the only way to get the house.
Right.
But the problem is when you're ratifying, you really don't know what you're dealing with yet. And you might be able to avoid, hopefully the market's becoming more normalized and we are going to be maybe in a situation where we can really think about whether this is a good idea based on the history of the transaction from ratification and through home inspection.
Right.
Sorry,
and
got off
that's
point
always that is always good to keep in mind.
Yep.
Now, is post-settlement occupancy, because I do see this question a lot in different Facebook forums that I'm on. What's the difference? Is it a license or is it fall under the Virginia Residential Landlord-Tenant Act?
Right. So our forms committee did a great job when they put these together, and they specifically have a section here that says this is a license. So this is a contractual right between the parties. You get to stay in my house for this amount of money. We are specifically not pulling in the Virginia VRLTA rules. So you're not a tenant, I'm not a landlord. If you stay in, I don't have to go and file eviction proceedings in the court. I still have to file maybe proceedings, but they're contract based. They're not gonna pull up like all the moratorium on evictions, all of that kind of stuff. And the one other thing I would add here is that when we have situations where sellers are not out by the time of closing, you know, sometimes it just takes longer. And a lot of times buyers have a lot of grace and they're just like, oh, it's okay. They can just be out by tomorrow at 5. And we're not gonna charge them any rent. We're not gonna do a security deposit. Please, please, please. That's fine. Pull this out, fill it out, do zeros, sign it. Because if they don't vacate, you do not want to have to evict them. And we had a case where that's what happened. And they didn't do a post-occupancy, so they had to actually go through eviction processes. And, you know, it was a disaster. So cover your seller, cover your clients, you know, even if there's not going to be a charge. So what happens then, because you're talking about the seller staying beyond, is there a provision in the agreement that talks about what happens if the seller stays beyond the time frame? And that's actually a really important provision, because what it basically does is it doubles the daily rate. So, you know, our contract, you can have a flat rate, you can have a PITI. If you occupy past the time, the remedy here is to double it. And one of the things that we've seen in the last, 6 months is that people weren't being charged rent. But guys, be really, really careful. If there's not going to be any rent, you still want to go down to that default paragraph and put in a per diem default rate. So the rate 0, we're going to let you have free rent. But if you stay post occupancy, post time you're supposed to, if you don't have an amount to double, it's still free, right? So you want to put in a pretty high amount so that you can zing them and try to encourage them to get the heck out of the house.
Have a nice little leverage, because at that point, that's
all you have. That's all you have.
So as always, we hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions or specific scenarios that you need guidance on, feel free to reach out to one of us and we'll be happy to help you. In the meantime, we look forward to seeing you at the settlement table, and have a great day.